Hey everyone, my name is Aaron from Aaron Reviews Media, and from blockbuster action to boss fights, I'm covering it all. So grab your popcorn in one hand and your controller in the other, and let's dive into Gambonanza. I've been playing a new indie roguelike based on chess called Gambonanza while I wait for Subnautica 2, so let's talk about my thoughts on the game. So there isn't a whole lot of story to this game, but the story that it does have involves beating several robotic versions of famous chess players in chess matches bosses. It doesn't have much of a story because it's not trying hard to be a story game, it's just a simple roguelike based around chess. It takes what Balatro does with cards and turns it into chess. I don't have a whole lot to say about the story because there isn't really much present at all. And it's not trying to do anything special with the story, but I can't give it more than 1.5 stars out of 5. The individual characters in this game are pretty much each of the bosses. Each boss has a unique ability. I'd assume that each ability corresponds to a chess grandmaster's playing style, but since I'm not super familiar with the world of chess, I can't really comment on that part of the game. Feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about this assumption. I really like the names they gave each character as a play on a famous chess player. They don't really have any dialogue though, and there isn't a whole lot of depth to them. So once again, the game is not trying to do a whole lot, so I'd also give the characters 1.5 stars out of 5. I was actually unable to beat this game prior to writing this review, mostly because I am absolutely terrible at chess. However, I was able to log 6 hours on Steam and get to stage 4 out of 5, so if I were able to beat the game, I probably could get 8 or 9 hours out of it. And there's a couple post-game content that I didn't really explore. One of them increases the difficulty, and then if you beat it on that difficulty, you can unlock another harder difficulty. With those additions to the post-game and if I actually beat the game, I could probably get closer to 15 or 16 hours. So for a $15 game, that's approximately 1 hour of content per dollar, which is a pretty good ratio. I never felt bored playing the game, but after a few runs, the game definitely got stale. I could probably only play the game for about 3 hours, and each run also lasted a long time, so I would maybe only do 1 or 2 runs a session. I do think that this game will become a permanent addition to my library, similar to like Balloon's Tower Defense, so anytime I have the urge to play a short game where I just hop on every once in a while, every time I get bored, this game will be in my library and be available to play. So for that reason, I have to go 5 stars on the pacing. The game is an indie game, so it has the pixelated style of graphics that come with most indie games nowadays. I really enjoy this style of graphics, but it doesn't innovate at all. The game doesn't really come up with anything new. It's nothing groundbreaking. And despite this, I would say everything looks pretty good. So I'd land in between 4 and 4.5 stars on graphics for this game, but I'll settle on 4.5 stars just because there isn't a whole lot that you can do with indie graphics and have it still be profitable. So this is a very good starting point. The game provided a solid amount of entertainment, but I definitely would get bored after a few runs. It got really repetitive and a little difficult. You don't have to enjoy chess to enjoy this game, but you'll get more out of it if you really enjoy chess. For me, the game served its purpose as a gap game for me to play in between my 2-week Minecraft phase and the release of Subnautica 2, but it won't really wow you, especially if you're not as into chess like me. The game won't provide the entertainment value that it would provide for someone who is a huge chess fanatic. For me, it lands at a 4 stars for entertainment. So the heart and soul of this game is the gameplay. I've been relatively negative on the other aspects of this game so far, like the story and the characters, but those are not really aspects that this game is trying to be good at. The game is really trying to offer something unique in gameplay, and for the most part, it succeeds. It decided, hey, what if we did Balatro with chess? And that's a really simple concept, but it works really well, and it provides a lot of really fun interactive moments in the game. where you can play chess but not be bored by the old timey nature of chess or the really prestigious value of being good at chess. So it allows people who are not good at chess to play the game, and it allows people who are good at chess to have a different way that they can play. The game is a roguelike game, very inspired by Balatro. For those of you who don't know, roguelike means that the game essentially resets after every fail or death. This game doesn't have any ways to get better after every death, which is a staple of the roguelite genre. I generally prefer roguelites to roguelikes because I like the feeling of getting gradually more powerful. This game is kind of lacking that, so if you are someone who's only played roguelites instead of roguelikes, then this game might feel a little different to you in that it's lacking a lot of the core mechanics of the roguelite genre. And the upgrades, which are called gambits that you can get throughout your runs, are very lopsided in terms of power. If you manage to get one of the upgrades that skips your opponent's turn, it's absolutely game-changing and makes your run 10 times easier. A few other gambits are very powerful, like the one that can duplicate special tiles, generate free pieces while waiting, and the ghost gambit is another one that's really fun. And some other gambits I found to be completely useless, and I would like a little more balance there personally. You can have some that are like really powerful and some that are like not that great. But you need to have a lot that are in the middle. And right now it's really dispersed at either end. There's some that's really up here and some that are really, really bad, and there's not really any in between. The second type of upgrade you can find in your runs is special tiles. These are mostly not great, I found, and I really tried to avoid selecting this upgrade. I did find some use for them late game after all your gambits are solidified. Once you have your builds and your pieces, you can't really buy anything else, so you want to start selecting these tile pieces and hope you get lucky and get something good. The two tiles I found use out of were the ghost tile, which adds a ghost piece to your stock. In combination with the queen, I could create infinite queens per game, which was pretty good, but they disappeared after the round ended, so I had to make sure that none of my pieces were hanging before playing the ghost queens. The ghost pieces are also useful because you can sack them without a penalty. Losing a piece to being sacked is incredibly detrimental in this game, which is a feature that I personally do not like about my time playing this game, and I'll go in more detail about how they might be able to fix that later. And then, of course, the second tile I found use in is a tile that puts a piece back in your stock if it's captured on the same turn, which essentially removes the penalty for sacking a piece, because if you sack a piece and get rid of it and you reset the round or you go to the next round, then it doesn't come back, so you lose that piece permanently. But this tile allows it to go back in your stock, so you can replay it on the same round, or you can set it up again when you go to the next round. Of course, the gameplay is just chess at its core, so it can only go so far, as I've alluded to earlier. The game has very clear and obvious choices for upgrades. You should always take the queens and the rooks when they're offered because they're so much better than every other piece, just like in regular chess. And pawns and knights have niche uses, but bishops in this game are excruciatingly bad, and you should almost never take one. It really annoys me how bad the bishops are, because in chess they can have really niche use. They can force your king to move with a check, or there's a lot of mating scenarios with the bishop. But in this game, checkmate and check don't exist. It is really problematic to buy a bishop because they pretty much have no use. I think that they should add some unique benefits to knights and bishops, and the king can also be solid if you pair it with certain gambits, but generally the king is not that great of a piece to have in this game mode. The overall problem with the gambit system is it's structured like an auto battler where you can build around the class of piece, and there's an ecosystem and a shop, but the pieces you build around are killed, they don't come back, and you have to redo your whole build, which is different than an auto battler. I really like the wait button in this game because it adds to the strategy. If there's no way to move a piece without sacrificing it, you can skip your own turn, but you can only do this 3 times. I think the game should buff the king also, but give it the drawback of being able to be checked. The game ignores check and checkmate. If the king started with a gambit or modification always, it could become a fun little boss piece, like I have to go take down the king now. Like that's the goal of chess, but in this game, when you lose your king, there's really no consequence. A check should force the enemy to move their king, and instead of checkmate ending the enemy's turn, it could skip their turn, allowing you to capture their king or another piece and go again. Like in chess, checkmate ends the game normally, but because I understand they don't want to end the game by checkmate, they want to end the game by having you capture all the enemy pieces, because that's what makes more sense for a roguelite. The checkmate ending the game could be changed into something else. So I understand why they removed the checkmate feature, but I think that being able to check a king allows for way more strategy on opponents' boards that have kings. And vice versa, like, you don't have to play your king because you can get checked, but you should get a buff or a bonus if you do decide to play a king because of that penalty. So there has to be some fine-tuning that they have to do to be able to balance the feature of check and checkmate. Alternatively, since I didn't really like that the game penalizes you for stacking pieces, which is such a critical mechanic in chess, the game could place a piece back in your stock once it's stacked and remove the landing mechanic. I didn't really use the landing mechanic that much. Maybe other people found way more use out of it, but it's not really a mechanic that I enjoyed. The developers could also allow you to land pieces without losing your turn. Either way, I think the game would improve significantly. Implementing both, however, would make the game really unbalanced, so you kind of have to choose one or the other of my suggestions there. Overall, I think the gameplay of Gambonanza is super fun, but is limited by being just chess. The game also removes several of the most fun features of chess for me, like checkmate and check, and I did have a lot of fun playing this game, largely due to the gameplay. So it gets 4 stars overall. Because the game is an indie game with minimal graphical fidelity, the performance of this game is pretty good. I had no lag spikes when I wasn't recording, but occasionally OBS caused my game to stutter. There are a couple gambits that trigger pretty frequently that can also cause super minor stuttering with their animations. And overall, the performance of this game, like many indie games, was super solid, but it wasn't perfect, so I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Overall, this game was super fun, but there's so much more that the devs can do with the game. If some of my gameplay suggestions were implemented, I'd enjoy this game a lot more. It lands at a 3.5 stars overall, and I'd personally give this game a 7.5 out of 10 on my personal rating scale. As always, like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. And remember, keep consuming media so I can keep covering.